Jose, I would suggest that you stand back, try to take a more objective look at this situation. Don't let your disdain for snack ruin and cloud your judgment here. Grimm was an unmitigated fucking disaster in that exchange. He overtalks routinely as a matter of tactic, and you're actually factually out of line to be trying to pin that one on Snack. Now, everybody knows I hate Snack. I am not defending Snack here because I like him. I'm defending Snack here because he was correct, and it was Grimm that was basically doing all the over-talking. Please reconsider your stance on the matter.
I appreciate that, Curve.
Okay, thank you. And I gotta say that, Curve, you are your own person, you got your own opinion, and because you got seniority over this server, not because you just say it, everybody is gonna applaud you and pat you in the back. You are correct. To your eyes, maybe to 90% of the people's eyes, not to me. I'm sorry. I agree to disagree, Curve. I disagree
your
with you.
opinion. It's your opinion that he was talking, that he wasn't. So you're wrong. It's just your opinion as well. We can all just use that card. The fact is, Jose, not everyone deserves to sit there and chat their shit and then not listen to the things that were said. The guy presented counter evidence to his point. He didn't want to listen to it. We tried to ask him a simple, straightforward question. He lied and diverted. Grimm isn't a sort of person that's having a nice conversation. He's not listening to the opposite person. He talks over people, like Curve also said. So I also agree with that opinion.
So his evidence for his claims is a pilot study. So what a pilot study is a very, very, very small and limited study. All right. My study, the one that I cited, to say that there was no evidence that vaccines were linked to asthma, was a very, very large study. It was a cohort study.
It was a very large study, right? With the children were not all unvaccinated that were listed in the categories unvaccinated. What it is they didn't have.
Do you have any evidence of that?
Yes, it's actually part of the criterion that we went over. I've discussed this with other people and went over this.
So what study was I talking about?
But the criterion was that in order to be labeled unvaccinated, all you had to do was not have all your vaccinations up to date. That
so what study was I talking? What study is this?
Wait a minute. Plus, the study of your big giant study was a very short term study. Our study
was over 6 years.
Excuse me. Blah blah blah. Our study was up to the age of 12 years old. Right.
No, you're confusing the age of the people they're looking at with how long of a period the study took place in. So your pilot study didn't take place over any time period, and it was very small. So, Grimm, stop. Just listen to me. Just listen to me, Grimm. So your pilot study. So the methodology. Let's see. Let's go down to the methodology. It's a cross-sectional survey of homeschooling mothers.
Let's clarify something real quick.
So already you've narrowed down the.
Can we clarify?
Hang on, Grimm. Just listen.
Wait a minute.
Your pilot study
let's clarify something real quick. Holy shit!
Hang on, wait. So, how many kids were even in this study?
That's not the point. The point is
it is the point. Longer. If you're talking about
points, yes, I agree. Okay, hey,
like that.
I agree. It's one of the points, bro.
You're saying that my study that took place over 6 years wasn't significant. Your study, the one that you said was so much better, took place within just 1 year.
Right. So you're supposed to actually.
You didn't even look at your study. It says right here, with funding limited to 12 months, we sought to obtain as many responses as possible. Contacting families only indirectly through homeschool organizations. So here's what happened, right? Here's why this isn't a great study. So it's relying on self-reporting.
6 years worth of data.
So it's relying on self-reporting.
You're a liar. You're a nasty liar, dude.
How am I lying?
Because
what lie did I say? I'm reading from the study you posted. What lie did I say?
You're talking completely over me, knowing that I have a.
Because you keep interrupting me.
You're abusing the situation.
Answer how he's lying. Answer how he's lying. You made a claim. How is he lying? I'm listening. Grim, explain how he's lying.
He's lying by first of all, he's hiding what I'm trying to say. He's telling me that I don't understand something about the difference between the amount of people in the study and the duration of the study. And then he's trying to lie and say that they only used a year's worth of data. Just because they only looked at for a year, they looked at 6 years worth of data over a period of 1 year.
No, they looked at a 6-year age range.
Read the study. You didn't read the study, you dipshit.
They looked at a 6-year age range. The study took place. It was self-reported by homeschooling families. So the people being studied, quote unquote, were already extremely narrow. They're not looking at medical records. They're going by the reports of homeschooling families. They're calling them up or sending them questionnaires and just having them answer the questions. Whereas my study was done over a period of 6 years, looked at, and this is done from the age range of 6 to 12. Whereas asthma, hang on, wait, Grim. Asthma, the median age for developing asthma is 11 months.
Just because you carry on doesn't mean you're being fair in the conversation, dude.
Okay, but hang on. So I'm stating the problems with this study. One, it was a small study. It says itself it's a preliminary pilot study.
You're being a crook, bro. You're stealing the conversation. Go ahead. There's no reason to talk to you. You're not going to let me talk.
Okay, anyway, so they're not looking at medical records. They're asking parents about their kids. Whereas the study I posted actually looked at medical. Graham,
with asthma or not.
I spent about 5 seconds speaking before you interrupted me. Go ahead.
That's because I was trying to figure out what I was trying to say before I got to even say what I wanted to say because I was too busy bitching about not being able to say it. How about that?
Well, maybe you shouldn't bitch so much and actually just say what you have to say.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, man. I would, but you won't be quiet long enough for me to do it. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? All right. So the point being, what I was trying to say was that just because the parents are the ones who told them that their children had asthma doesn't take away the fact that their children was diagnosed with asthma and they're reporting it. Are you saying that they're just making up numbers or lying and saying?
I'm saying that the limited nature of this study. I'm going to tell you my problem with the study. If you give me a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one, it's a pilot study. It's a preliminary pilot study. It's not overarching. It doesn't look at people from different sections of the population. Right, so, but hang on, let me finish, Grim. It's simply looking. It's asking mothers who homeschool their children what diseases their children have, which I think is not a great way to find actual correlations in the population.
How does that make it? All right. How does a mother not know if her child's been diagnosed with asthma or not?
I'm not saying they don't know. I'm saying that you're not getting the full picture because you're looking at such a tiny segment of the population.
And also, let me just want to add this point that information could be reported back incorrectly, falsifying the whole test.
I understand that. Look.
They could just misremember something.
Right, they misremembered that they have to have their children on.
Yes, they could. Like my kid is convinced he's allergic to peanuts. My kid is convinced he's allergic to peanuts because his mother told him he was allergic to peanuts. He eats peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, no problem. He's convinced he's allergic to peanuts. Parents can be incorrect about their children.
At the end of the
day,
day,
we're talking about actual diagnosis, dude. And we're not talking about idiot parents. We're talking about
okay, but if you ask his mother, what allergies does your son have? She'll list peanuts.
Relatively, are they the uneducated people or are they the more educated people?
Less educated.
Think about it.
And if you can't see the problem with that study, then that's a problem with you. The fact that he's having to explain the inconsistencies is not a problem.
I see that as a.
You obviously don't see that problem. That's a massive problem.
This isn't even about you, kid. I already see the problem with the study. That's the first thing I said to him. I can grant you that it's a small study, but it is only my first link. Remember that we're only talking about the first.
So also the fact one of the things is that if a child who is vaccinated is more likely to be diagnosed with another disease.
What other arguments he's got in this? That way,
if a child who has been vaccinated, I'm going to tell you another problem I see with this. So hang on. You have to have controls for certain things. So wouldn't you expect a child who goes to the doctor more often than another child to have been diagnosed with more problems? Like, let's say you have two kids.
Because
you have two kids, and one kid never goes to the doctor, and the other kid does go to the doctor. Grim, just hang on. Let me speak.
Ask me a question.
If you have two kids, one never goes to the doctor, the other one does go to the doctor. The kid that does go to the doctor is more likely to be diagnosed with something.
Obviously, because
in this study, it says your study, mind you, the vaccinated children were more likely to have seen a doctor for a routine checkup in the past 12 months. It was 57.5% versus 37.1%.
Right. Children who have symptoms like asthmatic symptoms do go to the doctor more often for checkups, regular checkups.
Children who don't go to the doctor don't get diagnosed with underlying health issues at the same rate as children who do go to the doctor. So both of those may be valid. I'll grant you that. This study doesn't This study does not control for any of that. So this study is not very useful. That's why it is called a preliminary pilot study.
I know you made that argument, remember? But I wouldn't hold all my eggs in that basket.
But it's taking you so long to digest the problem with your evidence that this conversation needs to speed up. Grim, you need to hear the criticism, take it in, and stop fighting every single point that he brings up.
Like you know what you're talking about. You're like the dumbest fucker in here.
All right, I might be dumb, but at the end of the day, he's put up problems with it. You can't see the problems of it. You can't see the problems of it, and I can. How can you even sit there and go, women reporting back on their own children? How can you not see that as a problem for a study? You're basing your whole opinion around a study that has so many flaws in it, and you can't even address the flaws.
Again, I addressed the flaws. Of course, I admitted already it's a pilot study and small, but that's not my only study in my hand.
Fucking get your best evidence and go from there.
Just hold your stupid horses, man.
No, but hang on. I don't want it to be so hostile. Let me be honest. I don't want this conversation to be so hostile. Can we just dial it back a notch?
Right. Let him build this castle, all right, Brummy, so I can pull the bricks out from under it when I want to.
Okay, but Grim, just understand what you're saying might be true. But this study that you've presented is not a very good study to justify your claims. I'd have to see something else.
Thank you. That's all I'm asking. That's the respect I'm looking for. Right there. Now I'm not even interested
I'll grant anything, maybe, but I have to see the evidence. I find serious flaws in the methodology with this particular study. Do you have... I understand you're probably busy. But you have to also understand that children who go to the doctor more often, for whatever reason, tend to be diagnosed with illnesses more often. Now, it could be, they're going to the doctor because they're sicker, or it could be the children who don't go to the doctors often don't get these underlying issues that they have addressed the way that the children who go to the doctor do. So, for example, I needed glasses my entire childhood. I had bad eyesight. Hang on, let me just explain from my own personal experience.
Why don't you hang on? I know you're over mic powering me, bro, but why don't you show the respect and stop gish galloping?
I'm not trying to gish gallop. So this is not gish gallop.
Stop arguing. Let him have his speech. Let's see what he's going to say.
This is not gish gallop.
Let him talk. Let's see what.
The definition, moving from point to point, not letting me address any of them, is gish galloping. It's literally the definition of gish galloping.
Get to the point then. Go on.
All right. So basically, it's understood that there's going to be difficulty in finding with the current idea of vaccines, like doing a blind study would really not be, I guess, what's the word, humane, being that, the idea of vaccines being so safe is a great idea. And so what they do is they take people who haven't been vaccinated in a while and compare them to people who have just been vaccinated. And then they start the study as if the people who haven't been vaccinated in a while are the unvaccinated. So you're seeing a lot of these vaccinated versus unvaccinated studies that aren't actually unvaccinated. And this is one of the issues I wanted to talk about. And then, that gives you the misguided reassurance you need to say, well, no, the studies are in. The vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, there's no difference, right? And I'm just saying that there's going to be evidence for that when I pull over. I'll show you that. And then, forgot what I was going to say about the other thing. Just give me a minute, and somebody cut me off. So that's distracting. Give me.
So the methodology for the study that I posted was the vaccine status of patients was obtained from data collected by the Vaccine Safety Data Link created by the National Immunization Program of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Asthma cases defined by criteria discussed in the article were identified using computerized medical encounter forms and pharmacology databases. To differentiate between asthma and bronchiolitis, a child had to have at least one asthma diagnosis or medication after age 1. Proportional hazards regression analyses were conducted to estimate relative risks of developing asthma according to vaccination status. And the conclusion was there is no association with the DTP, OPV, or MMR vaccines and the risk of asthma. The weak associations for the HIV and the hepatitis B vaccine seem to be at least partially accounted for by healthcare utilization or information bias.
So it seems like there is some dirty information, but you have to go and search further for it because it's not linked with the good information.
Like, do you know what a confirmation bias is?
Absolutely.
So you know about the B-24 bombers during World War II when they wanted to put more armor on them.
No, I don't know that particular instance of confirmation bias, but I understand what confirmation bias is. If I'm involved with a company like Fauci is in making a vaccine, I would want to promote the use of vaccines like a motherfucker so that I could self-promote my own company that's producing that vaccine. Oh, that's a real-time example of confirmation bias. How about that?
Confirmation bias?
Yeah.
That's not, okay, so that's not what confirmation bias is. So when I asked you if you knew what confirmation bias is.
It should be a confirmation bias.
But no, it's not, you don't, but that's not how it works. Okay, let me explain to you what a confirmation bias is. So the B-24 bombers,
being a lawyer for
when they were going out during World War II and bombing, and they decided that they needed to put more armor on these planes because they kept getting shot. When the planes came, see where all the bullet holes were, and they decided this is the place that we need to put armor. So when they did that, they ended up causing the planes to crash more, got worse. Why did that happen? Well, because they were looking at the places where a plane could get shot at and actually make it back, and instead weren't seeing the places where a plane would actually crash if it got shot, because those planes never returned.
Can I jump in for a second? You're talking about survivorship bias.
That's what I'm talking about.
I totally.
It's a type of confirmation bias. I was talking about. I forgot the word of it.
Guys, let me interject 1 second. I think that the reason he's using that example is because he's trying to say that sometimes when you think you're improving something yourself, you're actually making things worse. And I think when you're confirming your own bias, you're not really seeing things from the other's perspective. That's the point.
Well, I'm talking about the way that information bias. So where it says the weak association for HIV and hepatitis B vaccines seem to be at least partially accounted for by healthcare utilization or information bias. So the reason why these people who are vaccinated there's a weak correlation between hepatitis B vaccines and asthma is because people who go and get the hepatitis vaccine are probably going to be more likely to be seen by a doctor and thus have their asthma diagnosed.
That's not, you can't do that, bro.
That is how it works.
That's a confirmation bias on your end.
No,
it's a bit like one sec. It's a bit like a vegan, yeah. Like they live longer, but not because they're not eating meat, but sometimes vegans in general tend to be healthier, don't smoke, do a lot of exercise, and eat and like they do look after themselves generally better. So you can probably say, oh, vegans live longer because they don't eat meat, but really it's because they're more conscious about what they put in their body.
Really, it's basically the separation between correlation and causation.
Right. So obviously, I was thinking of conflict of interest and not confirmation bias, but confirmation bias exactly would be that it would be like saying just because a vaccine was introduced, well, let's say at the same time that plumbing was introduced, then the vaccine saved everybody from polio, even though we're washing our hands and no one paid attention to that. And if you only look at the data that the vaccine did it, then obviously only the vaccine did it. That's everything leads you to believe that your vaccine saved us. When in fact, it might have had a large, plumbing and washing our hands.
Plumbing existed. Polio was ripped through town.
Good example. Thank you.
Long before plumbing.
Was that just the example that you're using, or were you actually arguing that plumbing is a confounding variable?
He's saying that one of the reasons why we could have seen reduction in polio rates is plumbing.
Right, I'm going to ask him personally.
Listen.
Okay.
Am I allowed to respond to the questions that are asked to me, or do I have to wait for?
Can I just restate the question? Can I just restate the question very?
All right. So I'll go with the first question. Right? How can I, am I arguing that plumbing or whatever? And then your statement earlier, I'm going with two people at the same time here. Your statement earlier was that, that plumbing was long before the eradication of, the disease, right? Okay, so what I'm going to tell you is that if you look at the drop on the scale of the disease itself, you can see the death rate on the disease was actually dropping well to levels it already is today, close to those levels before the introduction of the vaccine, which is perfectly in line with the idea that plumbing, which happened well before, started that decline. Thank you for that resounding confirmation.
Okay, so you are actually arguing that plumbing is the confounding variable here.
No, what I'm arguing is that it could be a confirmation bias to assume the vaccine did it all. That's what I'm arguing.
Yeah, okay. Because they both occurred at the same time.
Right, so could it be a confirmation bias or not? I mean, that's the argument. I'm not saying it is one way or the other, but I'm saying it could be a confirmation bias. Does anyone else see that it could be a confirmation bias, especially with those times?
The confirmation bias is if you completely disregard any kind of other source of information that would refute what you claim. You're claiming that sanitation and plumbing is the only reason that
am I claiming that?
Polio, rubella, measles, etc.
Am I claiming that?
When in fact,
let's back up for a second before you make too big of a straw man and it takes too long to unravel. Okay?
Can you let me
That's what I want to do. That's the only reason I'm interrupting you. Is because did I actually claim that?
Well, just try to understand how when you say something, that's kind of like what you're insinuating. So when you insinuate something, people...
No, I need you to take my words precise on this one.
No,
okay?
because you don't... You don't really calm down a second.
I'm not taking a stance.
Calm down.
What I'm doing is
calm down.
Look, calm down. You're the one yelling, my man. Calm down. I'm driving.
You're talking over me. You're talking over my point.
I'm talking at a regular.
You're talking over my point. I'm trying to make.
You're sitting in your basement yelling with the echo. I hear it. Or your bathroom or pooping.
Have you finished yet? Have you quite finished yet?
Anyway, the point is.
I wasn't finished talking. I wasn't finished.
That's my position.
I wasn't finished.
That wasn't confirmation bias, depending on whoever side you're on. If I was on the side of it being plumbing, it could be a confirmation bias involved because I'm not looking at the vaccine information. But if I'm only looking at the vaccine information, could it also be a confirmation bias?
Finish your point, man. The fact of the matter is, you insinuated that measles and all that. Don't talk over me. Don't talk over me. Don't talk over me, Grim. You insinuated that measles has gone because of cleaning pipes and stuff like that. People then pulled you up on it. People pulled you up on that point that you insinuated, and then all of a sudden, can you listen? Can you just shut the fuck up?
I'm telling you, my mouth.
Shut your damn.
Listening.
Shut your mouth.
I listened. I heard you say
No
the
one-
wrong thing.
No one
Measles,
asked
the
you
word
correct.
measles I didn't say in this argument.
Wait till I finish speaking. Someone else
Try again.
Somebody's pulled you up on what they thought you meant, right? Because the way you said something. Now you need to be very clear on what you say, and then people can respond clearly. Don't sit there and yap.
I was clear.
Don't yap for 5 minutes.
clear.
No one's talking to you. Stop talking. You're being spoken to.
Clear.
So
oh my God, you're literally the dumbest person in here, and you want to control the fucking atmosphere. Shut the fuck up. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're mislabeling the conversation. You're showing everybody in here that you haven't been paying close attention at all. You're really making an ass out of yourself. I mean,
Grim, whenever you had a civil, you're always getting into arguments. When did you have a civil debate
when have I ever talked about something that didn't trigger everybody though?
No, you're always triggered, Grim. You're always triggered.
That you're thinking I'm the problem.
You're always triggered.
Get him back on the measles point. Get him back on that. Get him to explain why
measles got to do with this, you idiot.
Because you're trying to say that the pipe work was clean. What was you saying? The pipe work's clean, and that's why everything's been sorted. All the previous diseases. You're trying to say that vaccines don't work,
or measles, or all the anything. I said just polio could be a confirmation bias that vaccines or plumbing, either one. If you're from the side of either one, you.
The reason that
what we're doing is giving an example of confirmation bias. That's what we
the
were doing.
measles
You turn
has gone away.
some sort of
Measles has gone away because of cleaner plumbing system. Is that what you're saying?
What I did was very successful argument to agree.
Is that what you're saying? Yes or no?
You're just upset about that.
Is yes or no? Yes or no?
Yelling and nonsense when I made a clear, concise point about and people
Are
agreed,
you
didn't like that.
Saying the pipe works being cleaned is why the fucking the virus has disappeared? Is that what you're claiming?
Nope.
Okay, but you're trying to say that's a possible cause then, a cause and effect. Then is that what
Are you frustrated now? Because
are you saying it's a possible cause and effect? Are you saying something? You can't. You know what? You can't admit it, can you? You can't just admit it. Admit what you're trying to say. What is the cause then that measles has gone for? Because of cleaner pipe. You're a fucking spastic.
That's not my
vaccines work, you fucking moron. Vaccines work.
You call a moron. You literally sound like you punch yourself in the head.
Can both of you stop for a second, please? I understand what the first guy's point was. Sofa King, I think it is. He's saying that if you only look at one side of the evidence, then there is the possibility that you're missing something. That's a perfectly fine assessment. If they only look at clean pipes and they don't look at other variables, then yes, they're confirming their bias if they believe that the pipes are the only cause, just like with vaccines. If they only look at the vaccines, they don't look at other avenues, then they're confirming that their bias is just with the vaccines. That's not an incorrect statement.
So much. I feel like I can take a drink of my coffee again.
That's it. I just want to clear that up. That's good.
Is that, do you believe what the other guy was saying was after you've gone through and you combine both points of view, the sanitation and the vaccines, we have concluded decisively that vaccines are in fact the reason for the drop in rubella, measles, polio, and all the other various outbreaks.
Unquestionably, and to question that it could be fucking pipe work is ridiculous.
But that's a separate topic from the simple confirmation bias.
Polio, guys, from 1900 to whatever, 19, let's say 55, when they introduced the vaccine. Remember those images of the kids on the iron lungs that everyone saw back then? And they were telling you this what would happen if you didn't get a vaccine, and they showed a whole rooms full of children on iron lungs. That was called the Cutter incident. The Salk vaccine caused that. Caused all those children at the same time to get polio. So it wasn't that this would happen to you if you didn't get the vaccine. When you did get the vaccine. So these vaccine companies haven't been legit with us from the start. I have no idea why any of you trust anything they say. It's ridiculous.
I was vaccinated myself. I've been vaccinated by a fucking the BT jab and the fucking measles jab.
You're saying that you got that back in the 60s. You're saying that back in the 60s, more kids were getting polio from the vaccine than catching polio out in the wild? Is that what you're saying? You said 1965. Is that what you're saying?
There's the straw man there. I said
no. I'm asking you. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm asking if that's what you're saying, so I can understand.
Grim, you're impossible to talk to,
First
mate.
of all,
You're impossible to talk to, Grim.
It wasn't the same.
Just answer the fucking question and stop screaming and shouting.
And bro, shut up. The question was misquoted, right? He's thinking I
thought I heard you say in 1965 the kids in the iron lung got placed in the iron. Hang on. I'm telling you what I if I misunderstood you, fine. But what I thought you said was that in 1965 the kids in the iron lungs got put in the iron lungs by the vaccine. Is that what you said?
No. Ask me if I said that again before I tell you what I actually said. See if we don't waste some more time.
Well, you could answer him instead of fucking arguing.
Oh, I fucking tried that, asshole. He wouldn't stop talking, remember? I even went so far as to say, I didn't say that. I'm trying to tell you what I said.
Okay, right, so tell me what you said. I didn't tell him? Tell me what you said. Go ahead.
Nah, Grim, sounds like you're just
Stop
bitching.
whining and tell him.
First of all, I'm driving. All right?
You can talk
about you driving. No one gives a fuck about you driving.
I mean, Grim, be safe.
I'm sure
don't drive recklessly.
That I'm driving.
Nobody cares that you're driving. Just get your point out.
Right, I'm sure the people in the vehicles around me, dude.
Get off this chat then and stop chatting.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Get off the fucking chat.
I really focus on
what you're saying? Okay, then get off the chat.
Fucking shut. Now, if we get off the
argue with you instead of talk, right? You're not going to allow.
You can argue, but you can't talk. I understand because you're driving. You can only scream. You can't, have a rational conversation because you're driving.
Right. Because talking really works. You guys only like to hear me when I'm acting like an asshole.
Explain what you meant and get on with it. Stop bitching like a little bitch. Stop bitching.
Here it is.
Stop bitching.
I mean, did anybody else hear him say? Can anybody else hear him say something different? Because what it sounded like he was saying was that kids got put in the iron lung by the vaccine.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying.
He said soft vaccine. I heard him say the soft vaccine caused the people they put in the lung.
Cutter incident. 1955. They changed the definition. Actually, I'm not sure exactly what the year the Cutter vaccine incident happened, but in 1955 they changed the definition for what polio was, from having paralysis temporarily for 12 hours, that would be called polio, before the new definition, if the temporary paralysis lasts over 60 days. So the majority of the people who had been told that they had polio before that date, they would have 24 hours or a few days of paralysis, and it would have been called polio the day before, but now it's not. That was the majority of the cases. So with a swipe of the pen on the change of the definition, they eradicated a lot of polio that day in 1955.
I don't know how you, I don't. Congressional hearing in 1955 concluded the problem was primarily the lack of scrutiny at the NIH laboratory and biologics control. Yeah, the Salk vaccine. So the Cutter was sued, but the case is settled out of court. Yeah, I'm not going to say that they didn't fuck up. They obviously did fuck up. That doesn't mean that the vaccine. Hang on. That does not mean that the vaccine. So 56 children developed paralytic poliomyelitis. Of these, 5 children died from polio. So 56 children were paralyzed, and 5 children died. 5 of those children died from polio.
All right, but the important part of the story is they took pictures of that incident and told the public that this is what would happen to you if you didn't get it.
That was what was happening if you didn't.
That was the whole point
before the vaccine existed.
My point was to show the nefarious activities of these marketing scammers. Okay?
But there were thousands of these, weren't there?
They used a horrible traumatic experience of failure on their part and created a win out of it and sold more vaccines out of their failure. Listen to my man.
Let's look at.
Bro.
Yeah, I got an answer.
Please.
So you take issue with the fact that these kids who got polio, instead of just having them die in vain, they decided to They decided to use their deaths as a campaign to make sure no other children died. That's so nefarious.
Bro, they did the same thing in
They're the
Africa.
ones that killed those children. That's the fucking nefarious
Well,
part.
I'm still curious. You say
You
that
don't see that,
56, the image of
There
56,
was never a room full of polio
the
kids.
image of the image of 56 of these heart lung, what do you call them? I can't remember the fucking machines they were on.
Iron lung.
Iron lungs. These 56 iron lungs. There was thousands of people on these, not just 56. So whether they used this as a political campaign or not, there was thousands of people in these fucking machines. Thousands.
Yeah, thousands of people were injured by the vaccine.
Yeah,
no, you said 56. I thought.
Fucking people dying from vaccines, yeah, man.
Thousands of people were injured by the vaccine.
Grim, you're so ignorant, it's ridiculous.
Dude, your mama's ignorant.
Your dad
Polio
likes it in his ass.
Polio vaccine.
Your dad likes anal sex.
Grim, was that called? Grim,
your dad likes anal sex.
This is a non-acute polio flaccid paralysis.
Grim, was that even called for bringing someone's mother into this? Was that called for? Grim, was it called for to bringing someone's mother into this?
Does anybody know who has had polio?
So the iron lung was not invented until after the vaccine. So there was nobody ever put on an iron lung from polio prior to the vaccine.
And how's that not a straw man? I mean,
you're saying. You're saying that thousands of people were.
You don't explain yourself properly. No one's going to take you seriously. You have no information. You have no information. You have no proof. You just have stupid rumors. A mind full of fucking cack. You got.
Oh, I've got lots of proof, bro. You're just stupid. I mean, I don't even like hearing your voice. It sounds like you're eating mashed potatoes all the time. Just shut up.
I'm trying to see the rate, like year over year, of polio, paralytic polio.
I have all that data. I have all that data for you if you'd
and
like.
I imagine that the rates of paralytic polio went way down after the vaccine was introduced.
I'm kind of curious to see what proof Sophie King has got.
Yeah, I'm still confused as to what Sophie.
After vaccine.
By the way,
I'll be right back. I have to back out to get it. All right. So
is Sophie King? Is Sophie King Grim?
Doesn't have like.
Yes.
Is that the same person?
Yes. The Cutter left 200 kids with varying degrees of paralysis and killing 10. That doesn't explain the thousands of kids in heart lung machines or in iron lungs.
I guess it killed more than 4 because it spread.
You've got nothing. You've got nothing.
100 were varying degrees of paralysis.
Grim, you've got nothing, mate. You've got no evidence. You've got nothing. All you got is your bullshit stories. That's all you've got. Is vaccines are harmful. I think they are.
You got nothing. You got nothing to back up that they're not.
I mean, I'm living proof that vaccines are fine, mate. And I don't know any, and all my mates have done it. All my
You're living proof of autism.
My whole school had it. No one's
you are autism. Role play.
Yeah,
in the 1950s.
Go smoke some weed, man. Go smoke some weed.
In the 1950s. Wait. Hang on, let's get back.
Get high, man. Talk to God.
Don't argue with.
In the 1950s, there were, in that decade in the United States, there were 15,000. No, this is each year. So, case of polio paralysis in the United States each year before the 1950s and after polio vaccine introduction. So, in the 1950s, every year there were 15,000 cases of polio paralysis in the United States alone. After the introduction of the polio vaccine, that number went to 100. And then, so in the 60s, it was 100 a year. In the 70s, it was 10 a year.
Is Grim arguing that vaccines in general are ineffective, or specifically the polio vaccine?
He's posting something that says non-polio acute flaccid paralysis rates. That's non-polio.
Okay.
But basically, Grim, he thinks that vaccines he just needs to eat.
Don't talk about
you need to eat some fruits and veg, and you'll be all right. Eat fruit and veg, and you won't get measles. Like that. That's his mentality. He ain't injecting his kids with no vaccine because he thinks that natural immunities are better. He's a spastic, basically. He thinks he knows better than professional medicine.
Sofa, I was correct. So the cases of polio paralysis in the United States each year before the 1950s and after polio vaccine introduction was 15,000. It was the 15,000 per year in the 1950s. And in the 1960s, it was 100 per year. In the 1970s, it was 10 per year. It's almost like the polio vaccine worked and stopped people from getting polio.
Or they were previously diagnosing people with Guillain-Barré syndrome with polio.
Or you're a spastic, or you're just a spastic, or you're just a spastic. More likely, you're a spastic.
How many Guillain-Barré syndromes cases are there?
Mute that guy. He's just destroying the conversation. I'm bringing.
Let's see how many.
Teddy
Guillain-Barré
Roosevelt
syndrome.
had polio, but it turns out it was Guillain-Barré syndrome.
How many people have that a year?
Yeah, let's see how many people have that a year. Fewer than 20,000 U.S. cases per year.
That's not a little bit of cases. That's a lot of cases.
That is definitely it's very considered very rare.
Right, out of 300 million, right. We don't need to do the math, but it's still a lot of people.
What was the rate again?
A lot of people,
I didn't catch it.
right. It's like saying,
So,
I only killed, there's 300 people. Listen, there's 300 million people in America. Why is it a big deal that I only killed 2 of them? That's a small percentage. It doesn't matter, right? That's all you're saying there. That's just stupid.
No, that's not what I'm saying. You complain about people strawmanning your arguments when they simply ask questions, but then when literally
are
strawmanning my argument.
Exactly. That's exactly good. That's what's wrong with him. It's impossible to talk to. He wants all this fucking respect and gives out none. Doesn't listen to people's points of view. Don't take information in properly and chat absolute waffle. Or maybe the vaccines, maybe measles wasn't cured by vaccine. Maybe I'm just an idiot. Yeah.
Measles wasn't cured by vaccine, you moron. Shut up.
Well, obviously vaccines work. You can't deny that fact. There's proven evidence to back it up. These are a thing of the past because of vaccines, not because of clean pipes. Not because of clean pipes.
The conversation, you idiot.
Not because they're eating fruit and vegetables and building up their own immune system. This is because we inject a weak version of the virus. We inject a weak version of the virus. They get their immune systems, get the programming that they need to defend themselves against these things. But spastics like you are out there going, "Oh, everything's fruits and vegetables. Eat fruits and vegetables."
Like you watched all the injected people who got the measles. Get the fucking measles. The fucking spastics like me, dude. You're an idiot.
You are a spastic, though. There's proven evidence there to show you that vaccines do work, and all you want to do is think that it's pipe work. Oh, it's the clean pipes that we've got now. That's what stopped the measles, yeah, and polio. These things are a thing of the past because people have been working tirelessly in labs to create ways to program our immune system. But then you got people like you on the internet who think you know it all and you don't know shit, mate. You don't know nothing. You can't even have a normal conversation with people in the room. You can't see the problem with your own fucking studies. You can't listen to anything anyone's gonna say. You're a spastic.
You're arguing beliefs because at the end of the day, all these studies, you were never there for any of this stuff. Like,
mate, you don't even know if the Earth's flat or not. You don't even know if the Earth's flat. You're a spastic.
I wasn't even done, man.
I don't want to hear from you. Go find out. Go look for your curvature, you little rat. Go look for your fucking curvature.
Do you really think you have to be there for the study?
Brummy, I can control Brummy like I do an animal. He's trained. You can make Brummy speak on command. It's like a dog. There you go. Look, speak.
You're a fatty.
Yeah, look, speak,
go,
boy.
Go and have a shave. Go and shave your fucking hair. All right, go and fucking wrestle a girl.
Boy, speak.
Go and twist up where fucking.
Right.
Look,
Jesus.
Look, all you got to do is tell him to speak, and he does. Brummy's a dog. That's how I look at Brummy. He's a dog. You tell him to speak, he does.
Like you do.
He's not saying anything. He won't say anything actually. He'll just say, but you're a stupid idiot. Vaccines work. You must know they work. You're fucking stupid. That's all he says.
You got beat by a girl. You got beat by a girl.
There he goes. Look at him go.
Go and find some curvature.
Oh yeah, we didn't know he was.
Go and find some curvature, you fucking imbecile.
This is free will. You're looking at gall or free will right now.
Going back to your initial assertion that confirmation bias can exist, why do you guys not think that you are using confirmation bias when you deny the evidence, the preponderance of evidence that supports vaccines?
Confirmation bias does exist, but we have to look at whether or not the bias matches reality. the graphs don't match the vaccines actually helping because the decline in disease was already happening long before the vaccines were introduced.
That is 100% false.
If you look at Suzanne Humphrey's book, Dissolving Delusions, she goes over several graphs that show the decline in disease happened way before vaccines were introduced by sanitation, good hygiene, and good nutrition.
A perfect
look at this.
example.
Look at Corona. We don't.
Hang on. A perfect example of confirmation bias. You go on one source that backs up your claims versus the tens of hundreds of sources that refute your claim. Again,
but think,
confirmation
look at it like
bias.
this.
Well, then again, it's not confirmation bias, it's the consistent narrative. Why aren't the graphs showing correlation with the causation, namely introduction of vaccines, then precipitous decline in disease? Why doesn't reality match the narrative? It really isn't even necessarily about confirmation bias per se, although that may be part of it. But where's the consistent narrative?
There is a consistent narrative. Within a year of introducing a vaccine, every major virus took a downward turn from infection rates from then on, as long as we vaccinated. It's undisputed.
Look at it like this. Look at it from our point of view. So we don't even think Corona is real. They're showing us this number on TV, okay? Now, there's this number on TV and it's high. Now they're going to say the vaccine. The vaccine comes out, a whole bunch of people get it. Now they're going to show us a lower number and go, it works. Look, the number was big and now it's small. It works. And I'm just like,
have you seen how they gain statistics?
Year is higher this year than it was last year and the 5 years preceding that. Something is killing people in much greater numbers, as much as 2 to 3 times the numbers of normal death rate.
Bro, isn't there like an 80% false positive? Or
I don't give a fuck.
Nobody's misdiagnosing death. Are you that stupid that you don't know the death?
He's that stupid, and if there is a virus that's been made by a man and it's been given to us, and they have a vaccine for it, so fucking what? Let's fucking take it, because if not, your relatives are going to die anyway, so fucking, if they've created it to give us the vaccine, so fucking what? Who gives a shit? Hopefully you don't take it and you die. Hopefully you don't take it.
You're insane. You're MK Ultraing yourself.
Hopefully you die.
Well, I haven't gone into all the conspiratorial threads yet, and I'm trying to remain as sane as possible in this conversation as possible. But the misdiagnosis of death isn't the case. You mentioned misdiagnosis of death. How about recategorizing what the person died from before?
Small number of deaths is up. Do you understand? It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. Something is killing people at a greater rate this year than it did last year and the 5 years preceding that. Something is killing them. Now, you could argue whether it's some kind of magical disease or unicorn farts or whatever. There's no arguing the fact that the death rate week over week, year over year, is up this year, coincidentally with the same time that we're talking about coronavirus. Now, you make the argument it's not corona, but something killing them. It has nothing to do with classification.
Well, this is where the mechanisms come in. If you have one side saying that germs are these invaders from outside of the body coming in and causing sickness versus the other camp saying that your body makes this stuff naturally anyway, how do you reconcile the narrative? Someone's going to say it's an invader. The other side is going to say there's some other toxic source that is causing your body to make viruses and bacteria as a cleanup crew anyway. So how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, then why can't we grow bacteria and viruses outside of the body?
You need to use blood and natural substrates to do so. You need to use a living substrate like living blood to do so, or living bovine serum or blood. So that's a technicality. You need to have a living bodily-like system to even grow it.
Lemon, you don't know what you're talking about, man. Stop.
You don't need to.
He's right.
You don't need to. You don't. Okay, hold on. Are you talking specifically about viruses, or are you including bacteria in that as well?
I think we're talking about viruses with the coronavirus. You still need a living substrate to grow this.
Right.
Living blood or something that was once alive from a living organism put into the petri dish to be the substrate for the growth. Otherwise, you're not going to have it.
Correct, except you said bacterium with that, and that was wrong.
So, okay, can we just establish quickly that the reason you need to do that, I would imagine, is because viruses aren't strictly alive. They need like a host that they can infect.
Well, we can establish that based off the narrative, but if you're saying, if my side is saying that basically your body forms this stuff naturally as cleanup crew, if you have the blood there, it will eventually formulate this stuff anyway based off of that mechanism alone. You have to prove that it doesn't need that system there. It can just grow willy-nilly with or without the body somewhere else.
Okay, hold on.
For the germ theory.
Hold on. So, okay. A virus is just a bit of genetic material inside of like a cell membrane, essentially. So
I'm trying to unbiased and look at the two narratives as much as I can, equally, although I have a terrain theory bias. One side is saying that it's germ, so you need to prove it to me by proving that it can grow without some sort of living system here for it to come from. The other side is saying it comes from a living system, period. The living system makes it as a cleanup crew for dead tissue.
You're presenting a false dichotomy here.
That's the only dichotomy that's available currently for analysis. And if you'd like to analyze the third one, sure.
Lemon, just give me a second, right?
I actually can see how
so
Lemon's
wait,
saying,
hold on.
but then
Can you just give me a second to explain this to Lemon? So, yeah, a virus, again, just a bit of genetic material inside of a cell membrane. It can't live on its own. Okay, it needs to infect a host cell and insert its genetic material into that of the cell that it's infecting. To essentially make the host cell to make the infected cell produce more of the virus.
Talk to Grim instead of Lemon, because Lemon is never going to make any sense, and he's not going to listen to anything you've just explained. It's a waste of time. It's like
before I head on out, Brummy, we need to look at the two narratives and what the two narratives can explain and what they can't explain. That mechanism that you talked about, needing a living cell to reproduce, can still be explained with the terrain theory, saying that cells just produce this stuff as cleanup crew. So both of those narratives can resolve the same story. If they cannot, then you need to state how they cannot.
Okay, so our bodies don't just produce viruses as cleanup crew. All right, the virus has to enter the body in the first place. Okay.
Well, we don't.
The virus and its genetic material needs to enter and infect our bodies in the first place, and we can kind of show that we've got these viruses on surfaces, and we can we collectively understand how viruses infect our bodies and how they make our cells produce more of them, and how they generally don't have any cleanup crew. I don't really know what you mean by that, but
basically when your body is toxic, when your body is toxic, it makes bacteria and viruses to clean up the damage. Bacteria help clean up the toxic sludge, dead and damaged cells, and get them out of the body. And when it's super toxic, that it kills the bacteria trying to clean it up, period. Your body makes solvents called viruses to help clean up the damage in the terrain theory, which I find to be much more appealing and explain
so can you,
much better.
Is there any evidence that your body produces microorganisms to clean up damage?
The exosome theory, they're showing these exosomes, these bacterial virus precursors coming out of dead and damaged blood cells, and seeing a life cycle with the somatin life cycle that looks almost identical to viruses. They're basically saying with the exosome somatins.
When you kill the bacteria
and you guys keep interrupting Lemon Bird. I mean, we sat there and let this guy stumble through the fucking English language at a slow-mo pace for 5 minutes straight, uninterrupted. And then Lemon goes to respond, and everybody fucking thinks it's cool to fucking interrupt him over it.
I'm done. Who wants to say something?
That's why I was fucking chiming in. I was waiting for the slowdown on his voice so that I could do it.
Thank you, Mark.
Now,
really wasn't mad at you, Moyoc. I'm sorry, bro.
My question was not to Grim. My question was to you. Why is it that you say that the body produces these as cleanup crew, but when you kill the bacteria, specifically bacteria, with penicillin and other antibiotics, you get better? And likewise with viruses. If you kill the virus and your viral load goes to 0, you're better. You can do it chemically.
That's a good question. It basically counters that you're basically suppressing the symptoms that your body has to go through to get rid of this toxic gunk. So you get rid of the bacteria and the inflammation. That is the secondary symptom of trying to get rid of this toxicity. But the toxicity is still there and will erupt later.
Actually, quick, guys, interject just a little point. They've shown that you can, by just changing the medium, the pH of the medium that streptococcus is in, you can turn it into a pneumococcus, and then you can reverse it. Basically, instead of killing the bacteria, what I'm saying is you can actually give them a less acidic environment so they won't be in their most parasitic forms. They convert back to unparasitic bacteria and beneficial bacteria.
I still really want to explore this evidence that Lemonbird brought up earlier. You were talking about exosomes. I didn't completely catch everything that you were really talking about there.
Exosomes, when the cell is toxic, it makes these things called exosomes that look a lot like viruses. These output pouches, these sacs that bubble out from the cell filled with toxic material to be taken care of later. Exosomes. And they look a lot like viruses attached to cells. They're saying that what we identified as viruses may just be exosomes created by the body. And so people are looking at different theories with that.
Just because they look like doesn't make them virus.
Yeah,
virus is based on genetic and based on DNA, separation of DNAs.
So
they are not exosomes. It's not the same. Just because they are spherical and look like what you regard as look like doesn't make them virus.
So it looks like there's arguments to be made on both sides. You were saying so?
I've just googled exosomes, and this is saying that they are a membrane-bound extracellular outside of the cell vesicle, which is like it's just a ball of membrane. I think they normally contain things like secretions normally, as opposed to like genetic material. And they are produced in the endosomal compartment of most eukaryotic cells. So this isn't like
yeah, it's basically like the zit that the cell makes to get rid of toxic crap.
Lemon. So a vesicle that contains something being secreted, some like chemical being secreted by a cell, like hormone, or like a neurotransmitter, or
waste material.
Waste material, maybe, is completely different to a virus, which the only similarity there that I can really think of is that it's a membrane ball containing something, but what it's containing is completely different. A virus, it has like genetic material that is inserted into the DNA of the infected cell. That has nothing to do with...
Let me ask you something. When you tell us what a virus is, do you have any first-hand experience with this, or are you just telling us what you've read in a book or seen in some sort of documentary?
I mean, I've not...
that's what I'm doing as well.
I mean, like, I don't really have the... So, okay, to be clear, no, I don't really have the equipment to...
Okay, so you're just telling us some stories, basically. Cool.
Well,
thanks.
no, you're painting a false dichotomy.
Well, let's see what story is the most consistent. Let's just say that. Let's see what it can answer, what it cannot, because maybe we're all going off of stories, going off of faith and science and how they've been educated in certain ways. But maybe they dropped the ball, we've dropped the ball. Let's look at other stories.
So, okay, to be clear, Lemonbird, you're calling into question the germ theory of disease.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to explore some of the evidence for the germ theory of disease?
Sure, we can explore that. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I know it's a bit of a meme that I like to use Wikipedia, but I like that they cite sources, and it's a good place to find sources for information.
Take your time. The main problem that I have with the germ theory is hearing the stories of them trying to take the mucus and snot from Spanish flu sufferers, insert it into other people, and they weren't getting sick. By the germ theory, they should get sick. That's strike number one for me. Strike number two was hearing Susan Atkins' detailed story from the 2015, I think, where she found out that tissue samples from swine flu sufferers were coming back negative for swine flu. People that had been diagnosed as having swine flu, they had tissue samples sent off to the lab to analyze for swine flu, and they came back negative for swine flu. Stuff like this drives my conspiratoid brain crazy and makes me look at another narrative. And then I heard about the terrain theory saying that, these somatids, exosomes, coming from the body, from damage in the body, look in some cases almost identical to bacteria and viruses. So I'm going with a totally new narrative now.
What about the contagious nature of disease? How do you explain that? You can definitely see a family that gets the flu tends to spread it through the family. You can see a linear fashion where this moves through the population from ill person to healthy person. So how does that apply to a series of people who have bodies that are immunocompromised, having toxins built up and so forth and so on? But it only seems to follow a chain of events from person to person.
I've seen three mechanisms cited. One, a seasonal detox with the flu that all of us, like all bears hibernate, or some bears of a certain species or whatever, hibernate at a certain time of year. We get a cold at a certain time of year to detoxify our system, number one. Number two, signaling. You're off-gassing all of these corrupted proteins. Just three. Off-gassing corrupted proteins that are signaling to another body to mount an immune response, not because they're deadly germ invaders, but because your body's like, we better suit up. There's something out there. By off-gassing toxins, they call it, off-gassing. Number three was basically exposure to the same toxic source. The Black Plague was attributed to something else, to people burning coal and huge amounts of mercury that the bodies had to now detox, leading to eruptions like the Black Plague. So it's basically signaling, exposure to the same toxic cause, or basically a seasonal detox of some sort that we all go through at the same time, like with the flu.
So coal miners and people who work in coal plants tend to get Black Plague?
I haven't heard about that. That's a good way to test it. But they basically linked it to the mercury, and they were using coal to power their homes, their homes back in like the 15th, 16th century. And they attributed that to toxicity from the mercury in the coal.
Mercury doesn't seem to have the same symptoms as Black Plague.
Good point. I guess
it actually only takes a little bit of research.
Bubonic plague?
Yes. Yes, you don't get buboes, you don't get pustules from being exposed to mercury. So it's a fucking, you can already take your source and say that your source is questionable.
Because Ogyges Vonderplanet was talking about how the body goes through these detoxes, and he was talking about that as another mechanism for this disease. And the problem being that we don't have high quality raw uncooked fats to help us detoxify properly. And so these toxins are just accumulating in our system because of the low quality cooked fats, which make us unable to detox properly and not have the dynamic health that we normally would. But I'd have to look into it both sides.
Bubonic plague seemed to affect people of all classes back in the day. I would think that they would have had the quote-unquote access to good fats and so forth and so on.
In the West, I mean, we cook a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't know. If it was like an indigenous tribe, yeah. But like, the West, I don't know. We've been cooking our food for a long time.
Oh, cooking makes the fat not good. Okay.
It renders the fat useless and rancid.
Rancid.
Yeah, it's not raw.
That's not rancid and raw are two different, or cooked and rancid are two different things. Try and eat a piece of rancid fat and try and eat a piece of cooked fat. See if you see a difference.
Look, I'm eating my steak cooked, but Agnes Vonderplanitz was on death's door. He was about to die in the wilderness. He was one of those yippy dippy hippies, wanted to get back to nature, and a wolf brought him over some like raw meat and basically said, eat. He ate it and he felt better. After that, he started eating his food raw. And, you look at the dude before he died, looking like, a Greek Nordic god or whatever, looking very good. And he said he totally reversed his cancer or whatever the hell he had with raw meat, raw fats, raw. And he had raw vegetables in there too, but just raw.
Oh. Raw.
And another, what was that?
Raw. Raw.
Well, another very fetching white man went, raw as well. He had several, health problems, and he went raw to Southern Israelite as well. And so that's two compelling testimonies right there. And seeing is believing. There's another dude that I saw who had an obsession with raw meat. He looked like a Greek god. No skin problems. He looked very healthy. And he had an obsession with eating raw meat. And I'm like, maybe what he's doing is working because he looks good.
My father used to eat raw meat, steak tartare and stuff like that. He's still good. Didn't look like a Greek god when he died. So I guess by your method, we can just say that it doesn't work.
Well, how much do you eat? Do you still eat the chips?
Honest with you, Lemon Bird. I used to drink like Pepsis and eat McDonald's and Taco Bell and shit, and I was chiseled like a fucking retard. I'm out here when I was younger. I was like, you know what I mean? There's no reason why I should have been so, not fat and cut and all of that. But, except for that I worked and I was outside a lot. I don't know if it, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just genetics.
Yeah, I mean, but, you might look like, I don't know, Poseidon right now when you could look like Zeus or something. I don't know. But it might just be genetics, like you say. It might just be a coincidence. Who knows?
No, it's both. It's never one or the other when it comes to shit like that, bro. You know that.
Yeah, I'm not going to say don't eat well. That's not a method to health.
Yeah. I mean, whatever works and gives us dynamic health. I just look at a lot of these alternative, theories because I saw what I interpreted as the failure with cancer to get other things that control cancer, like natural herbs and stuff. It's always a synthetic chemical. Maybe we need to look at something else with the medical.
Is there a subject you're not an expert in, Lemon?
Thor, then...
I don't know crap about sports.
No, I said
what everything else you're talking about.
If I can ask quickly, what does dynamic health mean?
Going to the end of your days of life and not being on a walker, broken hip, shot full of synthetic chemicals, full of dementia, no memory, going crazy, weak, debilitated, unable to work, able to work until the day that you die with health, vitality, and wellness.
Well, stop getting fucked in the butt, man. You have to wear a damn diaper,
Do you not think that people's bodies just degrade over time as they get older?
But that's unacceptable. That's like an act of God. That's like taking the responsibility away from us in our shitty diet, our crappy diet.
Do you not think that people with good diets still, their bodies still degrade as they get older?
Nope, they don't.
But you take a big cock in your ass. That surely isn't healthy, is it?
Everybody likes to live on the edge and play with death until they die.
As in, okay, somebody who eats really healthy and works out, all the time, maybe they might degrade more slowly, or not, quite as maybe not quite as much by the time they die. But I don't think anybody, with very few exceptions, is going to be as fit at 80 or 90 as they are at 30.
I don't think that's the argument he's trying to make, though, bro.
Because that's just how our bodies work.
But what he is saying is a healthy lifestyle versus an unhealthy lifestyle. An 80-year-old could very well be as healthy as a 30-year-old, being that they have those two different lifestyles.
Like an exceptionally healthy 80-year-old. So yeah, okay, like an exceptionally healthy 80-year-old might be more healthy. Hold on. So, okay, an exceptionally healthy 80-year-old might well be more healthy than an exceptionally unhealthy 30-year-old. I don't see what the point is, though.
Well, I'll put in the chat one of the meat eaters, and seeing is believing, and all of this is about advertising too. But if you're looking like that, if you that dude in the video, that's a pretty good endorsement for the raw meat. Especially with like 2 or 3 other compelling testimonies.
Let's touch on that fact for a second. So there's no utility in knowing, you're saying, that eating a healthier diet can prolong your health and life? I think there's utility in that. I mean, does anyone agree?
What was that? Was that addressed to me?
Well, yeah,
I agree.
Basically you said you don't understand the point of that. Like that.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, obviously, but that didn't seem to be what Lemon Bud was saying. He seems to be saying more than that.
So, I wasn't trying to pinpoint what he was saying into such a small category so that he could be absolutely wrong. I'd be a straw man. I wasn't doing what you were doing. I was just trying to point out what I gathered from what he said.
Like, I don't think anybody is denying having a healthy diet and working out is going to prolong your life. And
right, not anymore. But I mean, when he first presented the idea, it seemed like he was getting a lot of flack. Flack, like when they shoot at the bombers because they're over the target.
Because Lemon Bird has got a reputation for chatting absolute waffle, a bit like you. That's why he gets that sort of response, because he doesn't really make a clear, concise point. He just says a load of words and bunches them all together and makes like less of a point. And he does it consistently over and over and over, and it's tiring to listen to him. The bottom line is, you've got no hard evidence to believe why vaccines are harmful, but yet you believe it. And fucking Lemon Bird don't even know what fucking time of day it is, so it's pointless to do about it.
Literally, we can show evidence after evidence that vaccines cause damage, that they're not safe for everyone, and that
fucking peanut butter's not safe for everybody.
Well, no, that's just your dumb lie again. You always like to say you have absolutely no evidence
to
support what you're saying, even though there's clear evidence that many people have been damaged by vaccines. You have absolutely no consideration for those people as well.
I have consideration for people. I also know that people get mixed up. People get mixed up.
How can you have consideration for a damaged or injured people who you don't even believe exist?
Whatever.
I
believe that people are
100% foolproof. I mean, yeah, there have been issues and circumstances where vaccines did cause issues for specific people, but it's less than like 1% of all totally vaccinated people in the world. So
that's considering coronavirus, it's less than 0.1% to 3% or something. We don't see the same sort of freaking out on a vaccine as we do on an issue like this. That's what I'm saying. That's an acceptable amount of deaths for the marketing.
No, you're conflating the numbers here. I'm talking about, I think there's a total court cases of like vaccine-related injuries totaling around 3,500 versus 85+ million vaccinations a year. That number in comparison is so tiny.
You're wrong.
Less than 0.01%. I'm not wrong. I can back it up with evidence if you want.
Most of those vaccine injuries go unreported. Most vaccine injuries are unreported. That's a Harvard study has shown.
That's an easy, baseless claim with no evidence to back up.
There is
citation needed.
A bunch of people. Okay, we'll look it up. Harvard study shows
You look it up.
less than 1% of VIRs are reported.
So again, how are you going to quantify cases that haven't been reported for studies to verify?
Go reported.
And why haven't they reported them? A total of, I think, $300 million has gone out to victims of vaccine-related injuries.
It's actually a vaccine that has injured them. They don't know that. They believe vaccines are completely safe and effective, and they have no reason to suspect it.
Says that. No one says vaccines are 100% safe. Absolutely no one, except you.
Most people think that they're going to be just fine.
Most
There's no
people
reason
will
for them to be concerned.
Based on
about
what?
getting
Your
a vaccine.
supposition? No one says vaccines are 100% safe. Absolutely no one. Any doctor will tell you that there is a small, minimal risk.
Well, a different understanding of the problem leads to a different solution.
But in fact, minimal is not minimal.
It is minimal. I just gave you statistics
for
what
it's
the minimal.
The whole world's dying of vaccines. It's giving everybody autism. They're so bad.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And the Earth's flat.
Look at the deaths. Out of 39 people, 5 died.
Listen, Lemon Bird agrees. Lemon Bird agrees with you. Well done.
You actually sound like you're speaking the truth, Barmy. Yeah, you sound very red pilled. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Lemon Bird is your ally right now. Lemon Bird agrees with you. Like that's what I'm saying.
Well, Lemon,
now the truth unites many people. Without the truth, you have no real unity.
Okay, Lemon. Now you have a reasonable understanding that what the hell, mercury doesn't cause bubonic plague. Are you going to now take that out of your list of the source for that out of your list of sources?
Well, because of my bias, I'm still holding to the theory until there's more evidence presented. I will need to look at which way, if any, the terrain theory in this regard can handle the bubonic plague and mercury sufferers back then from the coal versus now, if it does that at all. I need to do further research before I drop the belief.
By the way, coal was not used during the bubonic plague for the most part. That's an industrial revolution thing.
Yeah, using it to power to warm their homes and stuff. Coal fire.
Coal was not primary fuel for the time of the bubonic plague. It would have been wood.
I should be embarrassed.
Coal is mostly an industrial revolution thing.
I think you're conflating coal with charcoal.
I'd have to look back. Let me get the thing. Hold on. See if they got the timestamp. Carry on.
Yeah, during the Industrial Revolution, when coal was used to heat and used for everything, it was not. There was no incidence. There was no incidence of bubonic.
We read it quietly and decided to ignore it because it showed evidence that non-polio acute flaccid paralysis is directly or indirectly caused by the vaccination schedule in India of polio. That's literally what they say. And let's ignore that and continue treating people who are talking about this shit as if they're just idiots, knowing that you're ignoring some of the data for your confirmation bias that we discussed.
So you're going to rely on that, and then you're going to ignore all the other studies that demonstrate the efficacy of the polio vaccine and the other vaccines that are out. Is that what you're telling me?
Is that what I'm doing? Or did I look at those studies and see that those studies did not actually discuss that issue at all?
Oh, okay.
This study discusses that issue. How about that?
Okay.
It's all about the narrative. The narrative that polio vaccines do anything is undermined by the fact that before the vaccines came around, only 1% of cases ever turned to paralysis. The mechanism that they cited for it to go from a mild tummy ache for, say, normal polio to poliomyelitis when it invades the nervous system was something to make it cross from your digestive tract to the nervous system. The mechanisms that they cited that made that happen was taking out your tonsils, basically opening up the pathway to the nerves there by ripping
Oh,
out your
polio is much
polio
worse
would
now.
normally be mild and getting a heavier case of polio then, number one. Number two, they said that you'll get very similar symptoms to paralytic polio with the fertilizers and all the chemicals that they were using, the DDT and other things that could seep into your immune system and cause polio-like symptoms. So if that's causing the polio, then the vaccine's useless. The thing that's going to work is get rid of the freaking chemicals and make sure that it doesn't cross from
Everything
your
is
stomach
made of
cross
chemicals.
into the nervous system. So what
Everything is
narrative
made
are
of
you using
chemicals.
to back
Stop
your
that.
claim?
It really means brain stem inflammation of the gray matter, inflammation of the gray matter. Now this can be achieved in many different ways, and it can be misdiagnosed. A chemical poisoning can absolutely cause this swelling of the gray matter, and it can absolutely be
Hey, what
misdiagnosed.
chemical was it?
And by the way, we know for a fact that it has been many cases of misdiagnosis, even some of the most popular cases that everyone in the vaccine world used to bring up. Remember Roosevelt or whatever the fuck his name was? Remember that guy with the polio? What was his name?
Franklin no.
President? Jesus, dude.
Roosevelt. There's Franklin Delano and there's the other one. Theodore. Thank you. Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
FDR, yes, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Thank you, good. But also, got paralytic polio. People got paralytic polio in India from Bill Gates vaccines. So it looks like polio is on the rise from the vaccines. The vaccines that are filled with Lord knows what and inflaming your brain and your gray matter, especially if it crosses the blood-brain barrier with the polysorbate 80 or whatever's in the vaccine. So we really need a narrative to give us some sort of fuel to figure out what the hell's going on exactly. Is it the vaccine? Something else? What's going on?
What's great is that you are perfectly demonstrating the anti-vax narrative. All of that word salad you just said, it could have been right off of Del Bigtree's latest TV show.
He's got a narrative that powers you and empowers you to really understand what's going on. The narrative
get your 2-year-old
community
killed.
has so many holes, it's ridiculous.
Or get your 2-year-old killed.
Not believe that polio is a virus? I mean, I'm really finding it hard to understand what your point is on.
Okay, polio did happen back then, but it used to be a mild stomach ache in most cases, and you recovered from it fine, no paralysis. And only 1% of cases did it cross from your tummy into your nervous system and cause inflammation of the brain and paralysis from that. So it was very rare, number one. Very rare, number one. Number two, the vaccine seemed to cause more polio. It really the additives within the vaccine, number two.